roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make it mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
Man, that song gets me going every time. I love it. I need to figure out how to make that my ringtone. Seriously. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome back to Conversations with Kim Talk Show. Today is going to be so good. So tag the parents that you know, tag the teachers, tag anybody and everybody, because we have someone very special today. Please feel free to have your comments in the chat. If we have time at the end, we'll answer questions. But today we have Dr. Dominique Nikki Harris. She's in her 25th year in education, y'all. We have a subject matter expert for sure. She is the CEO and president of Dr. Nikki Speaks Enterprises, LLC, where she is a coaching and consulting for female leaders in business, education, and ministry. She also has a book called The Power of Process. Village, help me welcome Dr. Nikki.
Hello, hello. How are you today?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for being my special guest. We don't get many of your caliber, so we are excited that you are in the village today.
Thank you, Village, for having me, and thank you, Kim, for inviting me to chat with the Village. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes, ma'am. So tell us a little bit about your background in education.
Well, my background in education started 25 years ago. I have been in a variety of spaces in education. I started out in early childhood, and for the last 10 years, I have been in higher ed, training educators how to educate well. And over these 25 years, I have worked as a college professor, a consultant, an advocate for children with exceptionalities. I've written grants, programs for schools. I've also worked as an in-house consultant teaching young African-American teenpreneurs about business. So it has been, I've had an incredible career, and I am really just getting started. So I'm excited to share my expertise and wisdom with the Village today.
That is definitely a mouthful, Dr. Nikki. You are bringing a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and we are going to kind of pull all we can in our 30 minutes that we have with you to kind of just get a better understanding of how parents can be better educators and supporters for their children during COVID.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful.
So I do understand there is a lack of fairness and a noticeable difference in education right now. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
So what I'll do is, in order for me to explain it as best I can, I'll give you a quick history lesson so we can understand where what we call disparity and inequities begin. If we know anything about education, American public schooling started in the 1600s in the colonies. This was around the time that slavery was instituted. So during the time of the first public school that was instituted, it was only for males who were studying to be apprentice. They were studying apprenticeship. So during that time, young ladies, girls were not allowed in school, nor were people of color allowed in school. So here we are nearly 400 years later, and we still have some of those same problems. Well, for African American families, there were several landmark cases that brought about trying to levelize the education playing field. I know most of you have probably heard at some point about the landmark case in 1954, which is the Brown versus the Board of Education, where they said that segregation was unconstitutional. And then they began to push for integration. Well, when we pushed for integration, we pulled all of the students of color out and put them in environments where they were not accustomed to. We put them in environments under the auspices that they would be given the same education, the same access to opportunities, the same. So for them, it meant sameness. It didn't really mean equity. Sameness or equity and equality do not mean the same thing. So though our students were getting equity, they were not getting equality. So here we are in 2021. When the pandemic happened, all the pandemic did was expose the hidden inequity and the hidden disparities in education. So let me explain that. When we went to virtual schooling, we made the decision that all children had access to laptops and computers and had access to technology. That is a disparity, because not every child in every family has access to a laptop.
That's right.
There may be one computer in the house, or there may be no computers, and students use the computers that are in the school. So that's an example of an inequity that was not considered when we moved to virtual. The second thing is, some children only got healthy meals when they were at school. So now they're at home in an impoverished environment, not being able to have access to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So now we have students not having access to school, and they're at home starving. So other children are in situations where they go to school to escape abusive environments. Here's another issue within an inequity. Now they're at home, they're not eating, they don't have access to school, and they're being abused. Can you think about what the children are experiencing right now? So what the school system, some of them decided to do was to provide meals and asking the parents to come to the school to pick up meals. How do the parents go to school to pick up meals when they don't have access to transportation? Who are the students that have been mostly affected by the pandemic are Black and brown children. Why have Black and brown children been more affected than, our white counterparts? Number one, when the pandemic happened, our white counterparts already had access to technology. They had access to teachers. They already created pods. Those learning pods they went in and the parents of those white children pulled together, hired a teacher, and put their 10 or 12 students in that situation to guarantee that their children would not be academically behind 2 or 3 years. For African American families that did not have access to such resources, the children that were already struggling, they're going to be behind 3, 4, or maybe even 5 years academically. Can you imagine the rate for which they've got to catch up at this point? That's an example of inequity and disparity in education. So the only thing the pandemic did was made it more visible, more clear to show that we have never really integrated appropriately, because we don't have fairness and we don't have equality. So what I think we have to consider is, how do we as the village make sure that our children have what they need to be successful and to compete in a global market? Because right now we know that technology is on the rise. People are competing in e-commerce. How do we prepare our children to do that? And what I can encourage you and tell you that as a parent, you can do all of this. because I'm an educator and a parent, I have probably tried every type of schooling known to creation to find the best fit for my children, because their education was personal for me, because I understood what happens when you get into a college classroom. And I've seen people come to college and not be prepared to compete. So I ensured that I made decisions so that my children were able to compete in a global market. So what I want to be able to tell the village is, you as a parent, you are really responsible for your child's education. And if we leave it up to the hands of public educators and we leave it up to a system, we already see how the system, has already failed our children. We cannot leave our children's education in their hands.
Dr. Nikki, you've probably blown everyone's mind, because I'm sitting here trying to stay composed, but I am literally, my mind is like this. You put the spotlight on the system, and you have shown us that things that we thought may have been in order have always been out of order. Always have been. And now we understand the big picture. And so what do we say to the family, to the parent that understands this? And they probably have been frustrated because they've been waving their hands saying, I need help, I need more. So now, what are the educational options that they can have to get their child up to speed?
Well, first, I want to say to parents, give yourself a pat on the back, because you have been working as an ad hoc educator for the last several months. And you have done it without the expertise, the skill, or the patience that some of the teachers have. And so I want to commend you for not giving up. I want to commend you for being the biggest advocate for your child. So when we start talking about the diverse options that parents can choose. Now, I will say, I have been a trained public educator. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in higher ed. And so there's just different areas that I've worked in, and I can see what the disparities are. I can see how to prepare children to be able to compete. So the first thing I would say is, first of all, you make the decision to take back your child's education. Take it back. Don't leave it up to the powers that be. You have the right to decide what's best for your child. And honestly, as educators, we often tell parents, you are the child's first teacher. My job is to come alongside you as an educator to help to assist you in what, let's say, little Johnny may need. My job is to find out from you what Johnny is doing well, where Johnny is struggling, and to see how I might, as an educator, assist you in making the best decision for Johnny. But as a parent, you have to tell me what you think Johnny needs. And then working together in a cohesive environment, we can prepare Johnny. So the first thing is, definitely take back your child's education. Number two, decide whether or not virtual education is the right thing for your child. Decide whether or not public school is the right thing for your child. If you've decided that virtual education may not be the best solution, because to be honest with you, from a professional perspective, children in grades kindergarten through second grade are being annihilated by this virtual option. Students with exceptionalities or students with disabilities are being clobbered, if that's the word I can use. They're being clobbered by this virtual system. Personally, and I'm going to go on a soapbox for a minute, I think putting children in front of a computer for 8 hours is the most idiotic thing you can do to a child. Adults don't like being in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. So what makes us think that a child has the patience, the willpower to stay focused for 8 hours? It's just idiotic. It's asinine, and it is insane to do that to a child. The second thing you need to decide, what is best for my son or my daughter? What's best? When you make the decision of what is best, then you have to act upon what is best. So you may say, well, I cannot afford to send my child to private school. It doesn't necessarily mean that private school is the best option. Children learning in a safe, productive, cohesive environment is always the best option for your child. Children learning in the environment where they are free to be creative, where they are free to grow, where they are free to be themselves is always the best option. Typically, now I know people are going to think, well, she's an educator. Why is she shooting down public school? I'm not shooting down public school. What I'm saying is public school is only one option.
Yes.
It's only one option.
Mm-hmm.
One of the concerns in public school is that we create a one size fit all. That just does not work. Not every child learns at the same rate. Not every child is gifted. There are students who have disability that need specialized learning plans, that need specialized educators to assist them in their learning modality. So we have to consider that. Now, then you also have a parochial option. Your parochial option is where you send your child to a Christian environment so that they have the benefit of getting an education and also have the benefit of developing character education and developing Christian principles to be able to live their life and to be able to succeed in life. That's your parochial option. The next option you have is homeschool. There are two types of homeschool. There is traditional homeschool where all of the education happens inside of your home. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's one option. And then you have what we call a co-op. And a co-op is where the student goes outside of the home to take maybe a class in science. Maybe they are taking a physical education class such as ballet or dance, or maybe they're taking a upper division lit class such as African American literature or British literature or something of that nature. That's what a co-op is. So we have all of these different options that we can choose to best educate our child. And then we also have, of course, the virtual option. You have the public schools are using a virtual option. You have private schools using a virtual option. With the private school virtual option, of course, it's going to cost you. But the benefit, I would say, of that is you have access to more diversity in terms of classes and courses that students have an opportunity to be exposed to. Mm-hmm. But you as a family or as parents have to decide, what do I want for my child? And I will tell you this. Always invest in your child's education. Don't ever let it be part of your language that I cannot afford it. If we as parents can afford to buy Jordans, we as parents can afford to invest in our child's education.
Agreed. So you personally, your kids were schooled in your home, is that correct?
My children have been in both private settings, they have been in a parochial setting, they have been in a co-op setting, and they have been homeschooled. So for the last 2 years, they have been homeschooled where they got their education at home. So when the whole world went into the pandemic and they went into a virtual option, my children were already at home. So I didn't have to scramble on what to do because I had already prepared previously for them to be able to compete. My son was utilizing a co-op option at the time, and my daughter was using a virtual option. My daughter has since graduated, gone on to college, and last semester she finished with a 4.0.
Awesome.
So, you can, and my daughter, she's had challenges in school, but when we homeschooled her, we saw that it was the absolute best option for her as a student. And I wish I had done it sooner. Mm-hmm. My son has always been intellectually gifted. So he has, always excelled in school, but we created an environment that was more challenging, because when in the co-op environment, he came and said, well, Mom, I'm not being challenged. And so I made it my mission to challenge him, quote unquote, kick his butt, so that he could be able to compete in a global market. And so I think that we've got to make those decisions about what's best for our individual children, because not all of the children in the house need the same type of option. Yes. You got to decide what's best for each child.
Yes. And I love that you said that you're preparing him for a global market, because sometimes as parents, the thought is something here in the US, but the opportunities are beyond our borders. And if you want to, tap into some dollars that you have only dreamed about when you closed your eyes, that means traveling abroad.
Absolutely.
We have probably less than 10 minutes left. I want to, if any questions come in, I want to go ahead and make sure that they are addressed, because we definitely don't want to have you here and not be able to pull from all the resources that you have. But I think one of the questions I want to ask you right now is, for the inner city parent that may not have the resources for the Jordans or for the virtual type program where it's going to cost money, and schools are not open, and she's having to have her child, in front of the 8 hours, or they're sharing computers. Speak to that parent. What can you say to encourage her and help her or him or the parents to educate their child?
So one thing that I will tell you, and most parents don't know this, there are some private schools that are still open, but every private school has a scholarship fund. There are several parents that their children are attending some of the most prestigious private schools in the country, in the nation, free of charge. Here in the area where I live, I live in the kind of the Memphis hub, they have a scholarship called the Mo Scholarship. And parents can apply for this scholarship. Their children can attend all of the private schools in this area for free of charge, or little of nothing, maybe 15 or 20, maybe dollars. They're going to base it upon your income, but you have access to those type of resources. The other thing that you can do is, most of the homeschool environments, in all actuality, it's really inexpensive. They have programs like, what is it? I'm trying to think of the name of it, and it escapes me at this moment. But your traditional homeschool environments, such as things like Gateway and those things, they're pretty economical. Sometimes they may cost $100 a semester, or maybe even $100 a year. It just depends on the organization or the umbrella school that you choose. And so if we think about it costing maybe $100 a semester, let's say August to December, that really equates to $25 a month that you might pay to have your child in a homeschool situation. You need the umbrella school, because they're going to help you with the grading, the testing, and making sure your child has transcripts and report cards should you decide to send them back to a public school environment. So you have some very economical, advantageous situations. And then you have some where if you have the money, then you can invest it. So there's something available for everyone.
Okay.
You just have to kind of do your own homework and your own research to decide what is going to be the best thing for my family.
Okay. Now, I did hear, I hope I'm saying this right. I heard that the SAT has done away with portions of the qualification of the SAT, something about a report and some other aspect of it. My only reason for bringing that up is I wanted to know, what resources do you suggest for people getting their child ready for college?
I would definitely tell you to make sure, one thing is, the easy thing you can do is create a print-rich environment in your home. Have your children read books, not just comic books, but have them read books. Reading is still very fundamental. Children who read a lot, they have a more extensive vocabulary. They have a tendency to do much better on the ACT and the SAT versus students who don't read. Prepare them by using those handbooks that they have, the ACT book, the SAT book. Get them involved in those free online courses that they can take for the ACT and the SAT. There's just so many resources that you can use and expose your children to so that they are able to do well and be prepared for college, but definitely help them with their reading and their writing. And let me say this, having taught in higher ed, having taught some of the developmental classes are for those students who take the college entrance exam and they don't do well enough to be in a credit level course. They have to take a remedial class. And that remedial class begins to prepare them to be able to do well in a college level course. And a lot of times the students, they take developmental reading, developmental math, and maybe a study skills course to help prepare them. Let me tell you this, and this is what I told my children. It does not matter how you start, it's how you finish. Because when I first went to college, I had to take a remedial math class. But by the time I graduated and by the time I defended my dissertation, I made an A in statistics. So it doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. And so I just want to encourage you, use all of the free resources that you find first, and then make those investments in your child's future.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be a situation where you decide, you know what, maybe the child is asking for this new Xbox. You say, you know what, well, Johnny, I'm not going to buy you an Xbox. I'm going to enroll you in a writing class this time because I'm more concerned about your future. And that's how we have to be future minded with our children so that they'll be able to do well once we close our eyes. That's really what, and I tell my children, for me, I'm more concerned about your destiny than I'm concerned about your feelings. Yeah. Now, I'm not concerned about their feelings, but I'm concerned about their destiny. That's what's important to me. Yeah. So I'm always pushing, I'm always trying to expose them to things that will help them succeed in life.
You said a mouthful. You are more concerned about their destiny than you are about their feelings.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. And sometimes that tough love is exactly what we need, especially in these times where there's so many distractions. There's so many distractions on social media. There's so much on the news. There's so much going on that children have access to freely.
Absolutely.
So being able to, like you said, get into a book, learn something, increase their knowledge. I am totally on board for that. So, we have just a few more minutes left. What are your final words, Dr. Nikki?
What I want to say to parents, listen, just remember, you are your child's advocate. Please don't ever leave it up to someone else to fight and defend your child. You're their biggest advocate. If you don't speak up for your children, then they can't do it themselves. And listen to your children. When your children tell you they're tired in this virtual environment, sometimes I have to listen to my son. And when he says, I don't want to do it, and I have to let him have a break. But in that same vein, you also know what your children can do and what they can't do. You listen to your children. You be the one that fights for them. You be the one to help them make the choices about what their future is going to look like. And so you take back your child's education. You be responsible for what your child gets and what they don't get. You be their parent. I often told my daughter when she was growing up, I am not your friend. I am your mother.
That part.
And so because I am your mother, I'm not going to be your friend. You need a counselor. You need a mother. You don't need a best friend. We're not best friends. So be your child's parent. Advocate for your children. Make sure that you think about where you want your child to be when you close your eyes. That's what this is about. And make sure you be the proponent that helps propel them into destiny and that helps position them to be able to keep a legacy alive for your family. That's what you'd have to do as the parent. It's a huge responsibility, but I promise you can do it.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. We're out of time, but I want to say thank you. And we got to figure out when to get you back so you can talk more about the different things that you're doing and especially that awesome book. Tell us the name of it and where we can get it right quick.
The name of the book is called The Power of Process, and you can get it off of www.amazon.com under Dr. Nikki Harris.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, Village.
Oh my goodness. She is phenomenal. I just want to give her a virtual hug. Village, we are getting some quality people in here that, you know, have been coming and wanting to show us tools and resources and sharing their experience. She's in her 25th year of education. So please, this is the show that you like and share on your profile so that everyone will know what their options are and educate not just the village, but your friends and family. And remember, silence creates distance, but conversations with Kim builds the village. Thank you and bye-bye.